All right. Hello there, world. This is Dr. Dino, your normal host for Creation Science Theater. This week, we actually have an interesting video. Or at least I hope it's interesting. Should be fun, hopefully. So topic for this week's Creation Science Theater is arguments that creationists shouldn't use, presented by creationists. So this is done by Creation Ministries International. Don't really know much about them, but hopefully they have some good stuff to say. Yeah. Hello there, Jake. As I've been doing lately, this is an open theater. So if anyone in the audience would like to join, feel free. Alrighty. That said, might as well go ahead and get started. I'm going to start them on 1.25 speed. Oh, and tonight we'll be critiquing their critiques and just hopefully talking a little bit about the things that they're talking about. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to Creation Talk. Today we're going to be discussing arguments that creationists should not use. Hi, I'm Gary Bates, CEO of Creation Ministries International US. I'm joined by our head scientist today, Dr. Jonathan Safety. So Jonathan, we're going to discuss arguments creationists should not use, but I think first off is, why is this important? You and I have been involved in the creation movement for a long time, myself over 30 years. And sometimes, we go out on ministry or people write to us and they say, well, doesn't this disprove evolution, or does this prove creation? Not trying to be unkind, but sometimes we squirm a little bit because they are bad arguments that we know could be knocked down very, very easily.
Hey, yeah, that is fair. Obviously I'm not a creationist, so the more often they fall flat on their face, the better it is, in my opinion. But hey, good on them for actually wanting to confront these bad arguments. Be nice if creationists would start at least saying something new so it wasn't so boring.
And just as a preface, I just want to encourage people that as Christians, truth should count, integrity should count. And as a scientific method, it's fair to say, when I talk about...
truth should count, and integrity too. I do agree they should count, but I'm not sure that holds true for very many creationists. At least the ones preaching it.
About observable, repeatable, testable type science, our views can sometimes change in light of discoveries we make tomorrow. Right?
Well, exactly. Jesus said the truth shall set you free, not error. And also it's a case of what our foundation should be. It's the unchanging word of God, not fallible, changing human models, which even creation models can change as we have new evidence, so that we change our minds.
Yes, I think, in fact, we can refer to our former mentor for both of us, Dr. Carl Whelan, who brought us both into the ministry, former general manager of the Australian office. He said, hold to models loosely, hold to the Bible tightly.
It's a classic article.
I kind of agree with that, but also kind of don't. At least in the sciences, our models do change as new evidence is presented to us. But I don't feel like a lot of creationists hold to that. Their models seem to remain pretty consistent regardless of what evidence is presented to them. Also, hello, tell me more.
Article called Hanging Loose, and he actually warned people about things like the canopy theory, which was very popular at the time. This is back in 1981, but he even said back then it's a model, not a direct teaching of scripture, so hold it loosely. And now most creationists don't accept the canopy theory.
Yeah. So the canopy theory is the view that there was this water vapor canopy over the earth and it filtered out harmful radiation, created a special environment on the earth pre-flood, etc. We don't have time to talk about that because we'll do a special episode on that. It'll virtually take a whole episode to deal with. But again, you can just type those words canopy theory into our website and get some information on it. Let's deal with a couple, John. I'll talk about this one.
First, I'm going to turn them down a little bit. But Kudos on them for not holding to the canopy theory anymore. Makes them better than Hovind and a few others. Well, so howdy, Jake.
What's happening, Doc?
Not a ton. Creationists critiquing creationists for once. They're doing my job for me.
Yeah, I figured I'd jump in here and keep you company, maybe see if I can throw some jokes in.
Oh, fun. Maybe we can get another dance party going. I don't think there's any bad porno music in this one. Or at least I don't remember there being.
This one, if you
Sure,
like.
please.
This is this one that goes around that Darwin recanted on his deathbed, that, you know, what we call father of modern evolutionary theory. He changed his mind before he died. That is definitely a bad argument. There's no truth in it. And again, there's an article on our website. Type in
Good on them for admitting that.
Yeah, this is a uncomfortable and unusual amount of honesty from creationists.
Yeah, but like I've heard this talking point just repeated so many times.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'll go over the source of the claim here, but it's real freaking untrustworthy. Oh yeah, and Gutsick Gibbon did recently cover Ken Ham trashing creationists. He wasn't doing it in a constructive way, though. He was doing it in a Ken Ham way, meaning tearing down everyone except him to make money.
Darwin recants, and you'll see that. Now, this came about with a lady called Lady Hope. Darwin died in 1882, claimed to have visited his deathbed and heard him recount. Couple of things. That was not substantiated by anybody else, but like a lot of things, even in the church, within a year, pastors were preaching on it, saying, Darwin recanted, and it took on kind of a life of its own.
Yeah, luckily it wasn't internet back in those days, my goodness.
Yep. Even if he did recant evolution, that wouldn't negate any of the evidence he had already found.
Or all of the evidence that's been found since.
Exactly.
Yeah, or social media. So there is no substantive evidence that this was the case. And of course, Darwin's own family said that he never recanted, those closest to him as
and
well.
Some of them would have loved him to have recanted, like his wife never liked his theory, yet she never could corroborate it.
Now that I'm pretty sure is true. I'm pretty sure his wife, all her life, was a very devout Christian. And to be fair, Darwin was too, until his later years after his daughter died.
Yeah. From what I remember, literatures, and I don't know, I saw it was basically like a biopic, but yeah, she was not hip on his ideas.
Yeah. But, I mean, she still stuck with him, so must have been some love there.
And also you have to ask, does it prove what you're claiming? If he recanted, does it disprove evolution? If one of us recanted creation, would it prove the Bible wrong? Well, no, it wouldn't. So sometimes you've got to understand.
Holy cow, a really good point. Like, wow, bravo.
It's almost like these guys watched Ken Ham and Kent Hovind and went, okay, what can we do to distinguish ourselves from these people? And somebody went, how about tell the truth?
Yeah. Just beautiful.
This is wild.
Then does the argument prove what I'm trying to make it prove?
Yeah. It's not a really good apologetics argument in terms of our creation position, and obviously trying to substantiate the book of Genesis. Here's an interesting one. People might not have heard about this, but woolly mammoths were snap frozen during the flood catastrophe. Now, we do see woolly mammoths preserved in ice. I mean, they're some fossilized, but some you can even extract DNA on, and they look fresh, and they look like they were frozen or preserved.
That is true. We do have frozen mammoths, which is kind of crazy. A lot of them seem to have fallen into ponds or ravines. Like this one here, I'm pretty sure fell off a cliff. Like all the bones back here are broken.
Preserved very, very quickly. But what's the big deal about that being a bad argument?
Well, I mean, it was actually a
howdy,
misunderstanding of what they actually found. They're actually found in windblown deposits of, it's called lurs. It's a fine, dusty thing that's been consolidated. So it's based on a misapprehension. And then you find they're not as fresh as people think, because there is actually.
The funny thing there, so this right here, this is a German word, and he pronounced it correctly in German, which is interesting. Usually in English we call it lus, but the original word is more like lurs. It's interesting. Also, howdy, hill hugger.
Actually time for decay, like there's a putrid roots in the hair, so the hairs had time to decay. So it's not snap frozen. It's certainly frozen very fast, but also a lot of this was say Mike Ord's work on the Ice Age, where he showed the Ice Age would happen after the flood, and he showed the mammoths would have been buried towards the end of the Ice Age because of where we find them.
Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't they're not flood animals; they're actually Ice Age fossils.
Yep. All right, so another one, and this was very popular, probably an argument you may have used at one stage, and even myself, and the Japanese fishing trawler Zuyu Maru caught a dead plesiosaur. So there were pictures of this creature that looked like a plesiosaur, trawled up.
And I think this one got brought up last stream. I could be wrong on that, though.
The basking shark.
Yep.
Carcass. Yep.
Which they actually say.
In a net from a Japanese fishing trawler. And when you look at it, it looked like it had the classic wing-type fins, long neck, etc. Now, why Creationists initially got excited about this is because plesiosaurs, they're an extinct marine reptile, but they lived at the time of the dinosaurs, according to evolutionists. We find them in the same fossil-bearing deposits. So this would have been kind of evidence of almost like a living dinosaur in a way. And so, yes, people were very excited about it. But what happened is
and just to be clear, if we did find one living, it wouldn't disprove evolution. It would be an example of what we call a Lazarus taxon, which is a species that disappears and then reappears later in the fossil record or in modern day. The most common example is probably the coelacanth, but it's not the only one. Now, it's highly unlikely we wouldn't have seen a plesiosaur.
Yeah,
but it is hypothetically possible. What was that?
I said they were not exactly little animals.
Most of them, no. I think the smallest they got were like still at least 5 or 6 feet long. And they were air breathers.
Yeah. I just took my daughter to the Children's Museum back in July in Indianapolis, and they have a great dinosaur exhibit down there. So they had some, I don't think they had a plesiosaur exactly. They had something that was related to it. And then they also had like a mosasaur. So it was pretty cool.
Nice. Oh, Telemi Moore is talking about the Mokele Mbembe.
Yeah.
Which appears to have entirely been made up to scam creationists out of their money.
It sounds like a gecko. It must be a sauropod.
Well, so apparently there's either multiple ways to translate the name, or when the name was given originally, they gave just a nothing translation. Because it supposedly means he who stops the rivers.
Yeah.
But apparently some people who actually speak the local language have said, no, that just means rainbow.
Wow.
And again, wouldn't disprove evolution. It'd be real freaking weird, but it wouldn't disprove it.
Yeah. I think mostly though it's just kind of like drop bears.
They found out that actually this was just the carcass of a decaying basking shark.
And actually, to be fair, if there were a surviving dinosaur, like non-avian dinosaur, a swampy marsh, like most of the Congo, actually isn't a bad bet. hard to access, hard to get through, really, unless you know what you're doing. Hard to do it safely, for sure. Yeah, probably one of the best places you could look. But we haven't found any solid evidence of anything there.
And we've seen more examples of this. It's the way that it decays, etc.
Well, what happened, you see, the basking shark doesn't look like a plesiosaur, but when it decays, the gill arches they're very vascular, they decay really quickly, they slough off, and therefore it produces a sort of pseudo plesiosaur narrow neck profile.
And that's true. That is how that occurs.
But this is actually well known. One of our friends in New Zealand found an almost identical carcass on a beach in Kaikoura in New Zealand, and it's clearly a basking shark. So it totally disproves the plesiosaur identification. And look at the vertebrae; they're shark, very plain shark vertebrae, not the complicated ones that the reptiles have. So it's not a plesiosaur. Please don't use that.
Yeah, and
here, actually, right here or here is a pretty good diagram of how it happens, just in case anyone wants a visual. Like they said, the gill arches decay really easily, and it just leaves kind of the central cartilage right here that makes up like the skull. And then the fins also last a bit longer because they're almost entirely cartilage, and the main body. So
Definitely
yeah, good
see how
on them
somebody-
for acknowledging it.
You can definitely see how somebody could make that mistake.
Oh, for sure. But that's also why not many of these creatures hold up when anatomists take a look at them. Okay. The colloquial term that I've heard is a blobster. Like when you just find
Blobster.
these vague rotting carcasses. Like half of them are just whale blubber.
and there are better evidences too, because, for example, in the Wallamai State Forest outside of Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, they found a pine tree, now affectionately called the Wallamai pine. But evolutionists said, wow, it was like finding a living dinosaur. Why? Because they'd found fossils of this pine tree in dinosaur-bearing strata. So again, we have, evidences supposedly of creatures that lived millions of years ago, or organisms that are alive today. The plesiosaur is not a good one. There's also the coelacanth.
Coelacanth, yeah.
So this was a case of this creature where they said, look, these fins are precursors to it walking on the land, leaving the ocean, coming onto the land. And then I think it was Marjorie Latimer,
which has been supported by, other fossils. Like coelacanths are a type of fish called a sarcopterygian, meaning that they have really muscular fins, unlike most fish, where it's almost all the little rays here you see at the tip. And yeah, we have plenty of sarcopterygians that are actually pretty well adapted for moving on land. Some actually kind of scarily well, even today.
in Africa, found one for sale in a fish market early last century. And now National Geographic have been under the water, and we've seen pictures of them swimming in the Indian Ocean, in the South Asia region, in oceans there, seas there. So again, this was found in dinosaur-bearing strata, but it's alive today. So it's we have better evidences that we can use if rather than the plesiosaur.
Well, it's interesting. Coelacanths and whales live together in the sea today, but they're never found fossilized together. So that's an interesting thing. Just because things live together, there's no guarantee they'll be found fossilized together. So that's an answer.
Now, that is actually true. However, the modern coelacanths we have are a very specialized form of coelacanth. They're actually pretty unique within their group.
Yeah, that's what I was gearing up to talk about. It was like, they're like, oh, we used to have coelacanths and we thought they were gone. We still have them. It's like, well, the ones that are extinct, though, were the more shallow water ones. Those are all extinct. The only ones that survived were the deep sea species of them. And they're still very different from what was in the fossil record. It's not like they actually stopped evolving.
Yeah, they're a very specific deep water specialist. Which I mean, yeah, they specialized for deep water. Which might be why they're the only living ones remaining.
So if anyone asks you, why aren't humans and dinosaurs fossilized together? Well, why aren't coelacanths and whales fossilized together?
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't expect humans and dinosaurs to be buried together.
Okay, now for that question, we don't have very many deep marine sediments exposed on the surface from within the last 50-ish million years, which is when we start getting whales and coelacanths. However, whales are basically everywhere in the ocean, especially in shallow water environments, which we have had quite a few crop up on the surface.
We generally wouldn't inhabit the same environments. I
Right,
mean, it's
yeah,
like
I
saying,
agree.
it's like saying, well, why aren't humans and tigers or lions fossilized together? I generally don't associate with them. I don't know about you, but anyway. So here's another one, and this comes.
I mean, that didn't stop Neanderthals in Europe or Homo erectus everywhere.
Yeah.
Comes up
I
very,
like how
very.
he got sneaky right there, though, with the dinosaur thing. It's like, now we're going to slide this in.
Yeah. Like they're doing better than I will actually say most creationists so far, but they are still creationists.
Yeah. I was waiting for it. I'm like, these guys this is all like true stuff. They kind of slide something in somewhere. It's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, they're the lesser of two evils. That does not make them good.
It was slick.
Very common. If we evolved from apes, why are there still apes around today? Why are they hanging from the trees? If evolution is true, wouldn't they have died out? And again, we've got to be careful, because saying that is actually a misrepresentation of the evolutionist position too.
Well, okay.
Thank you.
Wow. That
is a massive concession.
Did I smoke something and I don't realize it? Am I high? What is going on here?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if it helps, I'm feeling the same way and I can't get high.
It's like the Twilight Zone or something.
Okay, they would say humans and apes came from a common ancestor, but if anyone saw that ancestor, they would call it an ape, okay? But the issue also is that evolution is supposed to happen in small, isolated populations that have been separated from the main ones. So they would actually quite expect that you have the main population.
Not always. Evolution tends to happen faster in smaller populations, but it can happen to large ones as well.
Unchanging and a small population branching off and changing. So they would expect to have apes and humans. It's not a big deal for them.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the classic evolutionary tree, there are many branches, and not all of those branches continued, as well. So yes, that last one's a very common one, and this next one is also very common, Jonathan, and that is the idea that women have one more rib than men. Supposedly going back to the creation account, where God removed a rib from Adam to create his helpmate, and therefore, men have one less rib today. First off, that's actually just not true. I mean, and it's one of those cases, to be honest, where you would be kind of laughed at if you tried to use.
Like, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure we'll have much to say about this specific topic. It's just like, yeah, that's not how that works.
Yeah, women have one more rib bone than men, unless that man is Marilyn Manson.
Oh, and so tell me more. You are right. Organisms that reproduce faster tend to evolve faster. but also just like smaller populations, it's easier for different mutations to spread quickly throughout the population. Like it'll take a quarter of the generations for a mutation to spread in a population of 200 than it will for a population of 1,000 or something like that.
It's
Like
also
it'll just happen quicker.
Yeah, it also happens quicker in organisms that have shorter lifespans.
True,
'Cause
but
there's
that also
there's more
correlates with
pressure.
faster generation times.
Yeah.
Use that argument because just it's a scientific fact that men do not have one less rib. So we mentioned Dr. Carl Whelan before, and when he was going to work for the ministry full time, migrating from South Australia to Brisbane in the middle of the Australian outback, he had a terrible head-on collision with a fuel tanker. They had to cut him from the wreckage.
Oh, geez, that's an ugly wreck. Damn.
That's pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
He's had over 60 operations to basically repair his body. And part of that was
Jeez, I
he almost
believe it.
lost one side of his face. Now, Carl actually has surgical qualifications, but his story goes that when he was in hospital, he noticed the doctors were going back into the same incision area they'd previously been, and they were taking out rib. The rib bone is very malleable, could be shaped, for the use on his reconstructing.
Now, I'm not a medical doctor. Well, not a doctor at all, but I don't know if this is true, but I could hypothetically believe it.
His face, and he said, "Haven't you run out of bone?" So even he didn't know that if you leave the periosteum, which is the sheathing, the more you leave it intact, the better chance the rib bone has of regrowing. So the rib bone is the only bone in the body that will regrow if you leave the periosteum.
Now, again, I don't know if that's true. Like, especially the regrowing. I just do not know. Actually, I'll go. Like, can you regrow ribs?
That's what I was doing.
Apparently, rib regeneration is common? What?
And rib bones show an unusual capacity to regrow
I'll
and
be
repair
damned.
themselves, even when a large portion is damaged. Wow.
I'll be damned. It's not, at least not entirely BS. That's actually kind of crazy.
Oh.
Huh.
It's not every day you learn facts from
a
creationism
video.
Yeah. Wow.
Huh. Yeah, I had no idea. That's really cool. Oh, no, why are they not strawmanning evolution? They did it a tiny bit, but this video is centered around correcting bad creationist arguments. So this stream, for once, is more of a critique of their critiques rather than them outright stating, bad science, at least for the most part so far. Like, this is, I guess you could call it creation science, but it's not as bad as the stuff I normally cover.
There. So, of course, Adam didn't walk around, like you said, for 900 plus years with one less rib. And the thing, too, even if you removed a bone, it's not an inheritable characteristic.
Well, amputees don't have amputee children, do they? And the Bible actually talks about a certain compulsory amputation operation for Jewish male babies every generation, from Abraham to Jesus. It had to be repeated, right? So,
all right. So another one we've got, Jonathan. I'll get you to.
Yeah, I mean that is true. Not horrible logic.
Wow. This is.
Yeah, tell me more. That is a pretty good summary. Sorry,
Yeah.
were you saying something, Jake?
I'm just flabbergasted at this video. I'm wow.
Creationists being honest people? What sorcery is this?
Yeah. Has
Uh,
Ember
I
seen this? This will blow his mind.
mean, man, might have to cleanse my palate with some Matt Powell after this.
Ooh.
Just go the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
To comment on, is this one that no new species have been produced? Now, we could talk forever about what is a species, and if you asked evolutionists, you'll get a different definition from a biologist than you would from a geologist. First thing to set you up here is that really species.
Well, so that is sort of true. There are multiple ways to define species. And since geologists are usually working with dead subjects, they're a bit more limited in what selection of the term they can, or like which definition they employ.
Yeah, although I would push back on that a little bit, is that I wouldn't expect geologists to be really worried about species too much. Maybe paleontologists, but
Well, I mean, even normal geologists, like fossils, are super, super commonly used, or really commonly used to recognize rock strata. And they tell you tons about depositional environments.
Species is a modern word. It's not something you see in scripture. And the fact is, if we use the modern descriptions of what a species is, it's not a problem for creationists. And there are lots of different species.
Right, because we believe that things reproduce after their kind, but the kind was far broader than what most people think of as a species. One kind would have been able to diversify. God programmed lots of genetic information so creatures could adapt to different environments and even produce different species. And
not 100% sure about that. Like the species concept that kind usually seems closest to is just the biological species concept, which is basically if two individuals can interbreed, then they are the same species. Or produce viable and fertile offspring. They're the same species.
yeah.
Which you could construe to be about equivalent to the biblical kind.
Well,
but they have a problem when it comes to speciation. Because eventually things will get a little too far apart for them to be able to breed again.
yeah, but that's why a lot of the creationists kind of like lift kind up to be more like at like the genus or above, is so that they can be like, well, there's a cow kind and a dog kind. There's lots of different breeds and species or whatever within that, but they can all come from the same source. And then they can adapt enough, far enough away from each other so that they can't interbreed anymore, but they're still roughly the same kind.
Right.
It's kind of that.
Oh, also, I just
shell
realized
game.
Standing for Truth is currently having a debate between Kent and Jackson Rowe. Oh, dear.
Ooh.
Okay, maybe we will have a short stream today so I can get in on that action.
Yeah. Jackson,
Oh.
I've been watching his stuff with Aaron Ra, and boy, Jackson can put some info down.
Yeah, he's been on fire lately. Like he recently emailed me. He put together just a massive freaking list of different species that he could refer to during debates. A list of transitional species in the fossil record. It's crazy.
Wow. That I gotta see.
Just a second. Got to do a thing. Sorry, I got a email that I needed to answer.
It happens.
Oh boy. Oh, you have an interview coming up on speciation? Tell me more. Sounds like fun.
And in fact, even different genera, the next highest level. In fact, sometimes they're even different families are clearly part of the same created kind because they can make hybrids, they can cross with each other. It happens.
Yeah, a good example is lions and tigers would be classified, as many members of the cat family are, as different species, but they can clearly interbreed, which means they came from an original created kind. But
That's not the conclusion I would come to, but at least we do agree that they are related.
Yeah, I think that was the number 2 of gonna just slip that in there. You know.
Yeah, like we said earlier, better than most, but they are still creationists.
as modern taxonomy goes, we classify
Also,
them
I
as
am gonna
different
speed
species.
this
So
up.
clearly you can get a new species. The argument is evolution in terms of the genetic information heading in the right direction. Small dogs, Chihuahuas, have less genetic information than Great Danes for size. And I often
No.
Yes. How about no? No, they
They,
have the same amount of genetic information.
as far as I know, they do indeed have the same amount of genetic information. Their information just means different things. Like, oh dear, no, wrong conclusion, wrong conclusion.
Yeah, and I grew up in a religious family, and you can always tell when people are talking about like genetic stuff, and they just have no clue whatsoever, because you're like, that's not how that works. Like, yeah, the Chihuahua is smaller, so it has less genetic information. It's like, no, you don't. That's not. It's like, isn't it like a certain? Is it certain bacteria? They have like way more, like hundreds of chromosomes and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the most genetically diverse animals is a species of carp. Like, oh, just no. Just entirely no.
I often say, if we hadn't seen Chihuahuas and Great Danes alive today, and maybe because we know they technically can interbreed, maybe only found their fossils in the fossil record, we'd probably be calling them separate species as well.
Now, that is actually probably true. Even just skeletally, they are pretty distinct animals, and we likely would classify them as different species. We might say that they're the same genus, but probably not the same species. And to be fair, I don't really know if they can hybridize.
Yeah, mechanics would be Probably a male Chihuahua with a female Great Dane might work.
That would be the best bet to avoid death.
Yeah.
Uh,
Of course, I had a mutt, and my parents had a purebred miniature Schnauzer, and the mutt was I don't know, bigger end of medium-sized dog, but that was the female, and the Schnauzer was the male, and they had puppies.
oh. So I looked it up, and apparently it has been done, but it is not recommended. There are a lot of problems. Actually, yeah, I'm reading more into this. Yeah, they might actually be distinct enough to be considered speciated, at least by the biological species concept, because even if the puppies are carried to term by either a female Great Dane or female Chihuahua, the mother is very unlikely to be able to care for them just due to the difference in size between parent and offspring.
Wow.
It also sounds like if the Chihuahua is the female, and of course you have to do artificial insemination, apparently death is a very common side effect.
Yeah, because those puppies are going to get really
Just
big inside
way
of her.
too big.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would almost say they're speciated. Because also, yeah, apparently they just physically cannot do it on their own.
Yeah.
Even
And-
male Chihuahua, female Great Dane.
Well, and if the puppies can't survive because the mother can't feed them or nurse them, then wouldn't that be considered not viable?
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I did not know that could be done, but what do you know?
Well,
Maybe separate families for all
We
we know.
did
Yeah.
know it
So the
shouldn't
Ted
be.
Yeah, no, it's not ethical at frickin' all, but it can be done. And therefore, of course, a human has done it. Of course.
species is very fluid. It's nothing that you need to be concerned about, ladies and gentlemen. Species is, if you want to use again the modern term, is really kind of a prediction.
Oh, Sydney's asking, would they be so different? So based on what I've read, if the female is a Chihuahua, yes, just the fetuses are too big for the mother to handle most of the time. And the birthing process can be fatal for both mother and offspring. Even if, let's say you did a C-section and the mother didn't die through the pregnancy, she would not be able to produce enough milk for all of her babies. Just physically not able to. If the mother is a Great Dane, she can carry the babies to term, but the babies are too small to be able to nurse effectively, so they have to be hand-fed. So, like, in the wild, they would not survive. So, crazy stuff.
Of the creation model as well.
Well, pre-Darwinian creationists understood that the animals on the ark would have been fewer than the animals we see today on land. Therefore, there must be some process of variation that we would now call speciation. So it wasn't a Darwinian invention. Creationists understood this long before.
Okay, yes and no. Like, Darwin did not invent the idea of evolution. He discovered the mechanism by which it works. So, not entirely wrong here.
The first mechanism that we knew about that we could prove.
He figured out the
Or
mechanics
demonstrate.
for Darwinian evolution, which is not what we call evolution today.
Yeah.
So the term natural selection is a good one to type into creation.com, because even through artificial breeding, selective breeding today, potentially people could produce new species.
And we've got videos on natural selection, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
That is true. If all the modern populations of humans remained, I mean, basically where they were for like 10,000 years, humans might actually speciate. Well, probably more like 20 or 30,000 years considering your generation time, but yeah, could hypothetically speciate. But it has not happened yet. And it probably will never happen, just considering humans are going everywhere now.
All right, so here's one that often gets circulated.
I mean, like, everyone in the audience, you probably know someone who has ancestry from at least 2 different continents, if not 3 or 4.
Circulated through viral emails that people receive and asking us for comment, and that is that archaeologists have found giant skeletons and giant footprints of massive human beings. And you've probably seen somewhere there's this huge skeleton and it's being uncovered, etc. First thing I can say is those images, if you've seen them, are false.
Yeah.
They are actually photoshopped. But there's a scientific reason why you could not get humans that size. And I just want to preface here that a lot of people jump onto this because they think this is a validation of the Genesis 6 account, because the King James Version uses the term giants,
right? Yes.
Where of course modern translations don't use that. So is it a validation of Scripture by seeing these alleged giant?
Well, I mean, if we go back to Scripture, as you just did, we should say, what does the Scripture teach? It teaches Nephilim is what the word is. Are they really giants? Why validate something which may not be scriptural anyway? But then the scientific law is called the square cube law. If you double in every proportion, the strength is based on the cross section of your bones and muscle. That goes up according to the area, which is the square of the linear. But
I think that's true, and this actually isn't a bad explanation of the square cube law. It's basically the bigger you get in every dimension, the more heavy you're going to get exponentially. And that does not do good when you're going from something that was small to something that is big. That's part of why big dogs, like Great Danes, didn't have a lot of hip problems.
Well, mass goes up to as your volume, which is the cube. So in fact, as you go bigger, you'll have far too little muscle and bone strength to support your weight. So there's no way things with human proportions could be 3 times the size of modern humans. In fact, even today, anyone who's actually over 8 feet tall,
not 100% sure about the strength there, but the mass is pretty accurate.
She has incredible problems. There's too much mass for you to cope, for your bones to cope with.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Look at the Guinness Book of Records and you'll see some of the very large.
Yep. Oh, yep. In Sydney, yep, that's exactly what I was talking about. Born in Wisconsin, from German ancestors, now in Australia.
Yeah. I was going to say,
exactly.
My maternal grandmother was born in Germany. And then the rest of my family was just random European all over the place.
Yeah.
And born here in America.
I mean, one of my sisters is half Indian, half, well, American, but German and British mostly. So, yeah, 2 different continents, 1 person. Modern humans, interesting.
Large humans that have existed that we know, and they have all generally had health problems, or in some cases, they've had genetic disorders that has caused them to grow to that size. So in short, there is an upper limit.
Yep, that's true. Once you start getting above, I think the limit is like 6'8", you start to have a lot of problems. Just because the human body is not structurally sound at those sizes. Like, I could be wrong, but I think even like 6'6" is pushing it.
Yeah, I don't know.
To what human beings can.
What was that?
I said I don't remember. I know I heard something about this recently. I can't remember if it was on one of Dapper's streams or something, but yeah, they were talking about the Guinness Book of World Records and the world's tallest person, and you know,
Mhm.
just gigantism in general, and all the physical ailments they endure. But yeah, it's definitely something I've heard of recently. So
Yeah, like I think Robert Wadlow still holds the record for height, and he was 9 or just shy of 9 feet tall, built like a reed, but he still weighed over 400 pounds. And yeah, he died at 22.
yeah, yep, yep. I remember hearing that.
If I recall correctly, his heart gave out.
Yeah, I mean, just think about how much pressure that thing would be under to move
Oh
blood
no,
that far.
he died of an autoimmune disease.
Oh,
But apparently he had to have braces for his ankles. And oh, actually another thing is saying a septic blister from a brace that he used to support his legs. Yeah, that sounds about right. Oh boy.
Can be. And we're not going to discuss this. We're going to sign off now. But one of the big ones, and we actually have a whole episode dedicated to this, is what we call the Paluxy footprints.
Oh my, yes.
That in Glen Rose, Texas, there are human footprints and dinosaur footprints coexisting together as an alleged proof that humans and dinosaurs live together at the same time. They're not human footprints. That's as simple as that. But if you're watching on...
Thank you. Thank you. This might be the first time I've ever heard a creationist acknowledge that.
yeah.
Thank
This has to be the wildest video I've seen on the internet in ever. I mean, this boggles the mind. How did you even find this?
I literally just searched creationism channel on YouTube, and this channel came up, and this is one of their latest videos.
Wow.
watching on YouTube or at our media center, just type in Paluxy, Paluxy, and we've got a whole episode based on that for you. So, Jonathan, we've just scratched the surface, and we have an article on our website, if people want to type it in, called Arguments Creationists Should Not Use. Shortcut is creation.com.
I think we can call it there. But once again, I mean, hey, shout out to Creation Ministries International. Definitely don't agree on everything, but this is hands down the best creationist content I have seen in months. Unironically.
Yeah, I mean, even just a lot of the apologists and stuff like that I end up seeing, it's just all the same old recycled arguments and proofs and evidence, this, and you've got Carl Baugh and Ken Ham and Kent Hovind, and and all these guys just regurgitating each other's lies. And this is like, it's like, nope, we're not trying to fake anything. We're going to come real with the science. We just believe this from the Bible. We believe it literally. We have no evidence for it. We're cool with that.
Yeah.
So this is definitely wild.
Well, I think I might actually call it good then, because yeah, I have actually been invited to lock horns with Kent a little bit, just on a topic. So yeah,
Dr. Dino versus Dr. Dino.
yeah, third time, I think. Oh well, that's it. Thank you for joining, everyone. I forget, Jake, do you have a channel?
Not that I really do anything with anymore. So
Okay. I can link it in the description if you want me to.
unless
That's up
anybody's
to you.
specifically into smoking tobacco pipes, then they're not going to find anything of interest there.
Fair. Well, then, everyone, have a good night. If you want to join me at Standing for Truth's channel, feel free.
I'm definitely heading over
If
there.
you don't want to, I definitely understand.
It's been fun.
Yeah. Have a good night, everybody.
See you, everybody.